Hi, I'm Rebecca. In this class, we will learn all about the future perfect tense. Now, this class is part of a series created by Ingvid to help you master all of the English verb tenses step by step. Now, the future perfect tense is an advanced tense, and it will allow you to speak about the future in a really interesting way that may or may not exist in your own language. So, shall we begin? Let's get started. So, we can use the future perfect tense in two ways. We use it to talk about an action that will be completed before a specific time in the future or before another action in the future. So, let me explain again. It's an action that will be finished or completed before a specific time in the future or a specific other action in the future. Okay? Let's look at an example. Then you'll understand a little bit better, and as we go through the lesson, you'll understand more and more. All right, so let's look at this timeline. Let's pretend that I'm a university student, and this is where I am right now. Okay, this is the present in time. And I'm thinking ahead, and so I'm saying, okay, 6 months from now, I will finish university. But when I think ahead, I say, therefore, a year from now, or next year at this time, what things will already be over? Next year, at this time, I will have finished university. I will have completed all my classes. I will have passed all my exams and all of those things. So what we're doing is we're using the future perfect to explain all the things that will already be finished before a point in the future. Okay? And as we go along, you'll understand more and more. Let's just look very quickly at the structure. So that's really easy. You just take the subject, I, you, we, they, he, she, it, which you know very well. You add these two words for every subject. You don't have to change anything. Just say, for example, I will have, and then we take the verb, a regular verb. You can use the past participle or the past participle of an irregular verb. Doesn't matter. Again, I'll explain that. So you could say, I will have finished university. I will have completed my courses. I will have attended my classes, and so on. Okay? That's the basic overview. Now let's look at when to use the future perfect tense so you can understand a little more clearly. So, we use it, remember, to describe an action that will be completed before a specific time in the future. For example, by next July, they will have moved to the States, they will have started new jobs, and they will have bought a home. So, where is the future perfect here? In 3 places. Will have moved, will have started, and will have bought, right? By this time in the future, by next July, these 3 things will have happened already. Okay? That means these things will have happened before. They will have moved. They will have started new jobs. And they will have bought a home before next July. Okay? All right. We can also use it to talk about a completed action that happens before another action in the future. I know it all sounds a little bit tricky, but it's not. It's really pretty easy to understand. So let's look at the example. Before you arrive, we will have eaten dinner and the kids will have gone to bed. All right? So, before you arrive, certain things will already have happened. For that, we're using that future perfect tense. All of this is happening in the future. You're going to arrive in the future, and these things that I'm going to describe are going to happen in the future. Everything is in the future. But in that future, what will happen first? So, before you arrive, we will have eaten dinner and the kids will have gone to bed. Will have eaten, will have gone. Okay? So here we're linking it to another action in the future. Here we linked it to another time in the future. Okay, next, we use it with certain expressions. There are certain common expressions that you'll often find when using this tense or when you're reading this tense. Words like before, right? We saw that. Before you arrive. Or by the time you arrive. By the time I finish university. Okay? Or by 9 o'clock. All right? By Monday. By next summer. Okay? These are some common words and expressions that you can use when you're using the future perfect tense. Now let's look at the structure of the future perfect tense. So I've divided the board into 3 sections for positive sentences, negative sentences, and for questions. So let's go through them step by step. So with a positive sentence, we're basically going to follow this structure. We take the subject, which is any one of these words or any other word which is functioning as a subject. We add will have, always, doesn't matter which subject. And then you have to add the past participle of the verb. What does that mean? It depends if we're talking about a regular verb or an irregular verb. They change, the past participles are different. For a regular verb, it's simply the same past tense form that you've always used. All right? Like work, worked. Brush, brushed. Dance, danced. Okay? That's the past participle form. It's the same as the simple past tense. Now, with the irregular verbs, you have to learn that third form. Okay? So, for example, leave, left, left. I see, I saw, I have seen, right? Seen. So that third form is what we need to use, and that is the past participle of the irregular verb. All right? Now, when you study the verbs, you will understand exactly what is that irregular form, and there's always a list of irregular verbs in most grammar books. Okay? All right. So, let's look at the positive sentence now. So, you would say, I will have arrived. Let's say, 24 hours from now, I will have arrived in Tokyo. Okay? You will have arrived. We will have arrived. You can repeat it after me. They will have arrived. He will have arrived. She will have arrived. It will have arrived. For example, the delivery, the parcel, okay? The email, etc. Okay? That's with the regular verb. Let's continue with the regular verb first, okay? To make it negative, it's really easy. All we're doing is we're just adding not, okay? I will not have arrived by that time. You will not have arrived. We will not have arrived. They will not have arrived. He will not have arrived. She will not have arrived. And it will not have arrived. Okay? So that's really easy. Now, let's look at the question. With the question, it would be, will you have arrived? So here it gets a little bit separated, right? So you have the will first, then you have your subject, and then have plus the verb, the past participle. So, will you have arrived by 8 o'clock? Will they have arrived home by then? Okay. Will she have arrived tomorrow? Okay, by tomorrow. That's how the question would be with the regular verb. With the irregular verb, basically you just need that third form of the past, which is the past participle, and then you follow the same structure, right? You will have left by that time. They will have left. Left is the third form of the verb to leave. Okay? And if you want to make it negative, you would say, they will not have left. Again, we're just adding the not, all right, to make it negative. There is a contraction, which I will show you soon. But for now, this is the basic structure. All right. And then again, the same thing. If you're asking a question with the regular or irregular verb, doesn't matter. You're following the same structure. So will they have left by that time? Will she have left? Okay. That's basically it. Sometimes when you're asking a question, you might want to put in a phrase, a kind of like a question word or a phrase like, by what time will they have arrived? So I could write that. Yeah. I could say, by what time? And then I'll have to not make it capital, but just write with a small letter. Okay, because I'm continuing it. By what time will they have arrived? Okay, that's it. And if you've understood this, you've understood the structure of this tense. And basically, just remember the will have, and that's the key. Now let's look at how we form contractions with the future perfect tense. So let's look at this sentence. I will have moved. That's a sentence in the future perfect tense. But very often in informal English, in conversational English, we use contractions or shortened forms. So let's see how to do that. So instead of saying I will, we can say I'll. Say it after me. I'll. Okay, it's a little bit tricky sometimes to get that L sound out, but you can. But make sure you are saying the L sound if you want to use the contraction, because otherwise it will sound like I have moved, and that's different. Okay, so how did we get to this? We basically canceled this part here and added an apostrophe, and then we joined these two words, and so it became I'll. Say it after me. I'll have moved. You'll have moved. Let's just say this part, okay? Because this is the part we want to focus on. Later, you can say it by itself or in a sentence. We'll. They'll. He'll. She'll. Let's say a couple of sentences. They'll have moved. She'll have moved. Okay, so you need to hear that L part before you go on. So that's for the positive sentence. Now, with the negative sentence, it's going to be a little bit different. So what happens? The normal negative sentence is, I will not have moved, right? But when we contract it, it's not logical. It doesn't follow the normal rules. We just have to use another word. There's a kind of a linguistic history why this happens, but it doesn't matter for you. For you, unless you're really, really interested, you can look it up. But for now, just learn this form. And so instead of saying I will not have moved, you just say I won't. Instead of will not, we say won't. Say it after me. I won't have moved. You won't. We won't. They won't. He won't have moved. She won't have moved by then. Okay? So that's basically it. That's how we form the contractions in the future perfect tense. Now let's look at some of the spelling changes we need to make when using the future perfect tense. So the changes will be in the verbs, right? Either you're going to use a regular verb or an irregular verb. The first part of the structure is more or less the same. You use the subject, then you use will have, and then you have to use the past participle. So that's what we're going to look at, the past participle of regular verbs and of irregular verbs. So with regular verbs, it's just the regular past simple form. So let's look at some patterns of spelling changes that you need to make. With most verbs, all you have to do to form that past participle or past simple form is add ed, right? That's all we're doing. We're adding ed, just like here. Work becomes worked. Check becomes checked. So most verbs, we just add an ed. With some verbs, however, we need to make other changes. If the verb already ends with an e, then we don't need to add ed. We just add d. For example, live becomes lived. Change becomes changed. All right? So all we added there was just a d. Next, let's look at another pattern of words. If you have a verb that ends with a y, and before the y you have a consonant, which means any letter which is not a vowel. A vowel is A, E, I, O, U. But if you have a y and before the y you have a consonant, like here, try, right? It ends with y and before it is a consonant. Then what we do is we cancel the y and add IED. So try becomes tried. Study becomes studied, right? Same thing. I will have tried my best. I will have studied for the exam, right? Like that. And the last pattern that we can kind of see, or one of the main patterns, is for verbs that end with what's called a CVC pattern. So C stands for consonant and V stands for vowel. So we look at the verb from the end. Let's look at this one. Starts with a C at the end. Then we have a vowel and then another C for consonant, right? CVC. So when you see a verb like that, when we look at it from the end and it has this pattern, then you double the last letter. So ship becomes shipped. They will have shipped your order, right? We see that here. Or hug. To hug means to embrace, like to embrace a child, or embrace somebody that you love is to hug. So this also has a CVC pattern. So the last letter gets doubled. Hug, hugged. All right? There you go. So these are some of the main changes with the regular verbs. Now, with the irregular verbs, that's the third form, and you pretty much have to learn them, and you probably know lots of them already because you've heard them, you've read them, and you may know many more than you actually realize. But these are just some of them that I've given to you, a few of the most common. For example, go becomes gone in the third form. All right, we're talking about that third form, the past participle that we need to use with the future perfect tense. I will have gone. Do becomes done. He will have done his homework. Give becomes given. They will have given. Take becomes taken. We will have taken. Write becomes written. She will have written the report. Okay? And these are just a few of them. There are many more. You can find a long list of them in any good grammar book or online. Now, let's practice what we've been learning. So, we're going to take some positive sentences, some negative ones, and one question. And we're going to change them all into the future perfect tense. All right, number 1. By the time he gets to the airport, the flight, we want you to use the verb arrive. So how can you express that in the future perfect? By the time he gets to the airport, the flight Yes. Will have. And then arrive is a regular verb, so it becomes arrived. Okay? Will have arrived. Good. Let's look at number 2. Next August, we, using the verb be, we something married for 25 years. What would that one be? Next August, we, yes, will have, and what's the form of be that we have to use here? That's an irregular verb. What's the third form? Will have been married for 25 years. Okay? Will have been, will have arrived. These are all future perfect tense. Okay. Number 3. By 3 o'clock, he blank his presentation. And we want to use the verb give. So, what would that be? By 3 o'clock, he will have, give becomes what? Given. Okay? This is another irregular verb. The 3 forms of that are give, gave, given. And here we need that third form. All right. Number 4. By 9 p.m., we blank dinner. Now, the verb you're going to use is have. Don't let that confuse you. So, we, what do we say? We will have, what's your verb? The verb you have to use, this you have to say anyway, right? Will have. Now you have to take the verb, just like you took give and made it given, you take have and make it what? We will have had dinner. Yes, we have this kind of construction in English. We will have had dinner. Why? Because the expression here is to have dinner. So that's your verb. Just like here, the expression was to give a presentation. All right? Or here, to be married. So whatever that verb is, you use the third form of that. Okay? All right. Very good. Now let's make some sentences negative. I blank work by 8 p.m. The verb is finish, but now we're going to make it negative. So, what will that be? I will not have finished, right? Because finish becomes finished, right? I will not have finished work by 8 p.m. Okay? Or if we wanted to contract it, what could we say? I won't. I won't have finished work by 8 p.m. Okay? Very nice. Number 6. They blank their homework. What does that become? They will not have. What does do become? It's an irregular verb. And the third form is they will not have done their homework. All right? Very nice. Now, for the last one, let's make a question. So, blank he eat by then. How do we start the question? Which word first? The word will. Will he have? What's the form of the verb we need here? It's an irregular verb. Will he have eaten by then. Okay? All right. So how did you do on those? Did you feel good? You're getting the hang of it? You're getting used to it? That's the way. Practice is always the best way to perfect something. Now let's look at some common mistakes that are made when using the future perfect tense. So sometimes the mistake is in the verb form for regular verbs. Let's look at an example and then you can help me to fix it. By Monday, he will have start his new job. So, where's the mistake? The mistake is in the verb itself, in the regular verb. What should it be? By Monday, he will have, not start, but started, right? We have to change it to that form. He will have started his new job. So sometimes that regular verb isn't changed properly. So make sure that when you're writing it and using it, you do change it. Sometimes the mistake is in the verb form for an irregular verb. For example, in the next few years, they will have teach thousands of children. So again, where's the mistake? In the verb form itself. This is an irregular verb. Let's go through it again. In the next few years, they will have something, thousands of children. So what's the third form of teach? It is taught. T-A-U-G-H-T. They will have taught thousands of children. Okay? Good. Spelling. Sometimes the mistakes are in spelling. We looked at some of those earlier. For example, by next month, we will have planned the conference. That's what the person wanted to write, but they made a little mistake in the spelling. Where's the mistake? Can you find it? So the mistake is actually in the spelling of the verb. So let's look carefully. By next month, we will have, oops, that's wrong. Look, the verb is plan, right? So there's C, V, C, right? So it should be planned, right? In this case, we needed to double the last letter. And sometimes the mistake is in the question form. Let's look at what this student wrote. You will have finished shopping by that time? Now, if somebody said that, will I understand them? Yes, I will understand them. But is it correct? No, it's not correct. And if you write that in a test or an exam or an email, it doesn't sound very good. It's not correct. So how could we fix it? It's really easy. Remember the form for the question? How will it start? It will start like this. Instead of you will, which is like a sentence, we change the order and we write, will you have finished shopping by that time? Okay? So remember, questions start with will you, will they, will we, will he, right? That's the way we start the questions. Now, these are just a few examples that I gave you, but they're just to show you the kind of mistakes that are possible. So be careful not to make mistakes with the verb form for regular verbs or irregular verbs, the spelling of the verbs, and especially with the questions. So now let's review. We have learned how to use the future perfect tense and when to use it. And you know how to use it when you can do 3 things: make a positive sentence, a negative sentence, and a question, such as we have on the board. So let's have a look at them. He will have retired. Here we have a regular verb. To retire means to stop working because you reach a certain age. So we could say, by next year, he will have retired. Or, by next year, he will not have retired. Or we could ask a question. Will he have retired by next year? Okay? When you can move quickly between those sentences, you've got it. Let's take an example with an irregular verb. She will have spoken to John by next week. Or, she will not have spoken to John by next week. Or, will she have spoken to John by next week? All right? Again, here we had the irregular verb speak, which became spoken. So, yes, you have to learn those as you go along. But I think you've done an amazing job. You've stuck with me till the end, and I know that you're serious, and I'm sure you've mastered a lot of this already. So what you can do now is write some sentences of your own. Practice saying some sentences of your own to talk about your life, to talk about people in your life. What will you have achieved by next year? What will you have done by next year? What will you have completed by next year? Write out some sentences, write out some plans, write out your vision for the future. Okay? And you can use this tense and practice it. Then, when you're ready and you feel you're comfortable with this tense, move on to our next class, which is on the future perfect continuous tense, which is also called the future perfect progressive tense. All right? And if you'd like to do a little more practice on this, you can always do a quiz at Ingvid. So, thanks very much for watching, and I wish you the very best with your English.